What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, undefeated 3-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the reigning undisputed welterweight world champion, superstar boxer, who is widely considered by many to be the number one best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, and Terence Bud Crawford. Terence Crawford is now 40 wins, no losses, no draw, 31 big wins by way of knockout. He is 35 years of age, 5'8", with a 74-inch arm reach. With that said, Terence Bud Crawford put on a dazzling performance this past weekend, this past Saturday, July 29th, Las Vegas, Nevada, T-Mobile Arena, in what was seen to be the biggest fight in boxing in 40 years, the most anticipated fight in the last 10 years, the most intriguing fight, 50-50 on paper, in quite some time, okay? This was supposed to be a 50-50 fight. This was against then unified 3-belt WBA, WBC, IBF welterweight world champion superstar boxer who was widely considered by many to be top 2, if not number 1. Definitely top 5 pound for pound, one of the best fighters in the world, in ERROL the Truth Spence Jr. ERROL Spence Jr. came into the fight with a record of 28 wins, no loss, no draw, 22 big wins by way of knockout, 5'9.5" with a 72-inch arm reach. Again, like I said, this was the truest 50-50 fight on paper that we've ever had in quite some time, if there ever were one. Since arguably September 16th, 1981, when Sugar Ray Leonard faced off against Thomas the Hitman Hearns, or when Oscar the Golden Boy De La Hoya faced off against Tito Trinidad in a unification bout. But we had bigger, more intriguing commercial fights. The biggest fight in boxing history, the most anticipated fight in boxing history, was Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao. That was 2015. That did 4.6 million pay-per-view buys and upwards of $500 million in revenue garnered. So with that said, this was one of the biggest fights in boxing. Undisputed. History was on the line. For the first time, we would have 4 major sanctioned belt undisputed welterweight world champion superstar in the sport of boxing. We've never had that in the sport of boxing, okay? The last time we had an undisputed champion in the welterweight division, it was a 3-belt era, and that was Zab Super Judah, retired, legendary, iconic Hall of Fame superstar boxer. That was the 3-belt era, okay? Now we're in the 4-belt era. Terence Crawford has broke the barrier at the junior welterweight division, becoming the first 4 major sanctioned belt undisputed champion, and did so at welterweight, and became the first male to become undisputed in 2 separate weight classes. So with that said, in the lead up to this fight with Terence Crawford and ERROL Spence, there was a lot of chatter, there was a lot of blame, a lot of finger pointing as to why the fight didn't happen. Terence Crawford made his debut in the welterweight division in 2018. He's now been in this division for 5 years. He came in after he defeated Julius Indongo to become undisputed in junior welterweight division. Terence Crawford then decided to move up to the welterweight division. He faced off against Jeff Horn for the WBO title, and he defeated Jeff Horn, stopped Jeff Horn for the WBO title. Since then, there was a lot of chatter of what's next for Terence Bud Crawford in his career. Okay, who was next? At the time, Terence Crawford, he had his sights set on the unified welterweight undefeated world champion superstar boxer Keith one-time Thurman. Okay, now keep in mind, Keith Thurman was the WBA, WBC welterweight world champion. He was undefeated. He had beaten Danny Swift Garcia, 2-division world champion Puerto Rican superstar boxer. This was March of 2017. Okay, now keep in mind, Terence Crawford, he fought Julius Indongo August of 2017. So he made his debut at welterweight June of 2018. Okay, and Terence Crawford had his sights set on Keith Thurman, who is now 30 wins, 1 loss, no draws, 22 wins by way of knockout. He is 34 years of age, 5'8" with a 69-inch arm reach. But at the time, Keith Thurman was the man to beat in the welterweight division. Keith Thurman went on a hiatus, but Terence Crawford, he had his set on Manny Pacquiao, Okay, 8-division world champion, legendary, iconic Filipino superstar boxer, Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao was the WBO champion. Manny Pacquiao defended his titles against Jeff Horn. That was the fight. Terence Crawford petitioned the WBO, World Boxing Organization, to be the mandatory challenger for Manny Pacquiao's WBO title. Manny Pacquiao went to Australia to challenge Jeff Horn. Many people thought that that was a tune-up fight for Manny Pacquiao, stay busy fighting, that Manny Pacquiao was going to defeat Jeff Horn. But shockingly, Terence Crawford petitioned so that he could be the mandatory for Manny Pacquiao, and Manny Pacquiao lost to Jeff Horn. Okay, so Terence Crawford ended up fighting Jeff Horn. Okay, he defeated Jeff Horn and knocked him out. Then he set his sights on Keith Thurman. When asked what was the biggest fight in the division by Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman on ESPN for Terence Crawford after he beat Jeff Horn, he said Keith Thurman. And they stated, well, Errol Spence looks like the man to beat in this division. He said, your eyes are deceiving you. Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith said, our eyes say Errol Spence and Terence Crawford is the big fight. He said, your eyes are deceiving you. Keith Thurman is that guy. Well, Keith Thurman then went on an unforeseen hiatus. Keith Thurman fought Danny Garcia again, March of 2017. He didn't make a ring return, Keith Thurman did, until January of 2019. He was out the ring for 2 years. In the midst of that, the temperature and the water started boiling for a fight between Terence Crawford and Earl the Truth Spence Jr., who later in May of 2017 went to the United Kingdom, or UK, defeated former IBF welterweight world champion British superstar boxer Special K Kell Brook via 11th round stoppage, breaking Kell Brook's orbital bone and winning his first title and his first title opportunity in hostile environment. He defeated Kell Brook and become the world champion. That was, again, like I stated, that was May of 2017. So remember, now a few months later, Terence Crawford makes his debut in the welterweight division. Keith Thurman is on the shelf. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Temperatures are starting to boil for a possible fight with Errol Spence and Terence Bud Crawford. Terence Crawford is now with legendary promoter, top-ranked CEO Bob Arum and ESPN. At the time it was HBO, then it moved over to ESPN. Errol Spence is with the Premier Boxing Champion, founder and advisor Al Heyman, Showtime President of Sports Steven Espinosa. So that's where Errol Spence is. So there's sides of the street talk, okay? And it started to boil over. Then Keith Thurman was eventually stripped. Keith Thurman was stripped of his WBC, World Boxing Council title. Two-time welterweight world champion, now retired future Hall of Famer Showtime Sean Porter and Danny Swift Garcia, they fought for the vacant WBC title that Danny Garcia lost to Keith Thurman. Sean Porter beats Danny Garcia. Okay? Then Sean Porter is focused on now a unification bout, as Errol Spence is now focused on a unification bout with Sean Porter, whom, keep in mind, is with the PBC, Showtime, as well as Danny Garcia. So Terence Crawford is the only odd man out. He's the only one of the welterweights that's not with the PBC. So Errol Spence has his sights set on now our unification with Sean Porter. September 28th, Los Angeles, California, Sean Porter of 2019 faces off against Errol Spence, not before defending his title against Yordenis Ugas and a controversial win that many people thought Yordenis Ugas beat Sean Porter. Nonetheless, Sean Porter beats Yordenis Ugas, fights Errol Spence September of 2019. Errol Spence defeats Sean Porter, split decision, dropped him in the 11th round, and picks up the WBC title. Just a few weeks, a week and a half later, just 10 days later, Errol Spence suffered a horrific car accident that saw Errol Spence thrown from his white Ferrari, moving over 100 miles an hour, and it tumbling down the street. Errol Spence then makes a ring return 14 months later and faces off against Danny Swift Garcia, December 5th, 2020. Okay, 14 months later, he defeats Danny Garcia in his get-back fight, nearly breaks his orbital bone. Now, keep in mind, the temperatures are really boiling for a Terence Crawford-Errol Spence fight. And there's a lot of contradictions on the part of Terence Crawford, because Terence Crawford is loyal to the soil on his side with Top Rank, ESPN, and Bob Arum. He re-signed there, and Top Rank and Bob Arum was not trying to push for a fight with Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. Okay? Terence Crawford wasn't happy with the way things was playing out on the business side, and he started to tell the world the Errol Spence fight was behind him. He didn't need it. Errol Spence then supposed to fight legendary 8-division world champion, iconic Filipino superstar boxer Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao. That's the fight that Terence Crawford was clamoring for. Errol Spence pokes at Terence Crawford, puts up a post. You with the wrong promotional company. I got the fight with Manny Pacquiao. This is a fight Terence Crawford was long in the making to have on his resume, and it didn't come to fruition. And legendary promoter Bob Arum stated he personally blocked the fight from happening because he didn't want to see Manny Pacquiao get hurt. And then on top of that, Jeff Horn shocked the world and beat Manny Pacquiao. So Terence Crawford beats Jeff Horn. Then he goes on to beat Jose Benavidez Jr. Then he goes on to beat Amir King Khan. Then he goes on to beat Ugas Kavalauskas. These are all wins that have plateaued Terence Crawford's career, essentially. Okay. Finally, Terence Crawford gets a fight with Special K. Kell Brook. He stops him, a marquee name. Then Terence Crawford finally gets a fight with 2-time welterweight champion Shawn Porter, and he stops him in the 10th round. Okay, makes a statement. Meantime, Errol Spence, he goes on fights Yordenis Ugas, who fills in for him because Errol Spence suffers a broken nor detached retina before his August 21st, 2021 showdown with Manny Pacquiao. Oddly enough, he poked at Terence Crawford and told Terence Crawford, I landed the Pacquiao fight before you. And then he suffers an eye injury that he doesn't even get the fight with Manny Pacquiao. Then Cuban star boxer, who's the former WBA welterweight champion, Yordenis Ugas, fills in for Errol Spence and dominates, absolutely dominates Manny Pacquiao, becomes the official WBA champion. Errol Spence is out the ring for a year. Errol Spence finally gets the fight with Yordenis Ugas a year later, April 16th, Arlington, Texas, AT&T, Dallas Cowboys Stadium. He faces off against Yordenis Ugas. 2022, he stops Yordenis Ugas. 10th round, breaks his ribs, nose, and orbital bone. Becomes the 3-belt welterweight world champion. Now the talks extremely heat up between Terence Crawford and Errol Spence in negotiations, because now where else does each fighter go? Well, negotiations fall through. Terence Crawford then stood on the square because he became a free agent. After he beat Showtime Shawn Porter, he sat on the panel with Bob Arum and told Bob Arum, you can't get me where I want to go. You definitely can't get me the Errol Spence fight, and I got to go in a different direction. He then became a network promotional free agent. Negotiations fell through. Terence Crawford stood on the square, demanded a certain number. The world then condemned Terence Crawford and told Terence Crawford he was pricing himself out. He was not being realistic. He was avoiding Errol Spence Jr. Terence Crawford walked away from the negotiations because he simply wasn't receiving what he was looking for. There was an offer made for Errol Spence and Terence Crawford without a guaranteed purse up front, and Terence Crawford wasn't willing to accept that. He then goes with BLK Prime, signs with BLK Prime for one fight, fights David Avanesian to stay busy. At the same time, Keith Thurman now is stripped of his belt. He finally landed the Manny Pacquiao fight in July 2019, and he lost his WBA title. So he lost the WBA title to Manny Pacquiao July 2019. Keith Thurman then has another hiatus from 2019 to 2022. Comes back, fights host Mario Barrios, who just came off a 3-knockdown knockout loss to three-division world champion and a junior lightweight who jumped up to 140, Gervonta Tank Davis, from 130 to 140 and knocked out Mario Barrios. Keith Thurman fights Mario Barrios. Okay, February 5th, 2022, goes the distance and gets hurt by Barrios. They're offering Keith Thurman now to Errol Spence. Errol Spence is not willing to take it. He's standing on the square demanding a fight with Terence Bud Crawford. Terence Crawford stays active, fights David Avanesian. Errol Spence stays on the shelf, not willing to take the Keith Thurman fight. He vowed not to fight Keith Thurman, but just like Terence Crawford, Keith Thurman was pushing Errol Spence to the side. Okay, and he pushed Errol Spence to the side so much that Errol Spence resented him and said he's not willing to fight Keith Thurman ever. So while Keith Thurman was being offered up, Errol Spence refused to take the fight. So he stood on his square. Terence Crawford stood on his square, said, I demand my worth. They finally had a phone call with one another after Terence Crawford knocks out David Avanesian brutally in the 6th round of his fight. They come to an agreement with one another. Errol Spence tells his side, hey, give Terence Crawford what he wants. Concede to him. Let's make this fight happen. They finally give Terence Crawford what he wants. We finally get the big fight, Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford shows and proves that he's levels above. Drops Errol Spence 3 times in the fight, stops him in the 9th round. Dropped him in the 2nd round, dropped him twice in the 7th round, then stopped him in the 9th round. This all proved to be a successful outing for Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. This proved to be successful for Terence Crawford. He was 1,000% correct to stand on his square. Initially, he was offered no guaranteed purse with no upfront money and not knowing what he was going to receive. To which Terence Crawford now knows that he is guaranteed to make $25 million at least for this Errol Spence fight. And moving forward, since he dominated Errol Spence in such dominating performance, he stands to make $100 million by his rematch with Errol Spence, because he is now going to be the A side against Errol Spence in the rematch. He gets to choose the weight. He's going to be he's going to receive the higher percentage in the rematch. And then big fights are awaiting Terence Crawford after Errol Spence should he be victorious. So he's going to make upwards of $25 million in the rematch. Okay. And then he's looking to make big fights, possibly a Jamel Charlo showdown, or who knows, moving forward. And it's going to see Terence Crawford make even more money because he's already proven now to be a superstar within the sport of boxing. He did upwards of 650 to 750,000 pay-per-views. They did the 6th highest gate in Las Vegas with 21 million at the gate, and he's guaranteed to receive 25 million. So he's going to, by the time he's finished with his career and finished with the PBC on this side, should he stay victorious, he's going to make upwards of $100 million, which means Terence Crawford was 1,000% correct to stand on his square when everybody condemned him to not do so and told him he wasn't worth it, and he proved otherwise. And that's all I got for y'all, man. Let's see what's next. Looks like we're going to get Errol Spence, Terence Crawford rematch in December. That's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to Black Media Roll. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.